Hello and welcome to Apalachicola I'm Ed Tiley, the editor, and today I'm with Dan Tonsmiere, who is the Apalachicola Riverkeeper himself. And we're here in the Apalachicola Riverkeeper office, and today's topic is the ACF Stakeholders. And for those of you who don't know that particular abbreviation, ACF stands for Apalachicola Chattahoochee Flint River System. And the stakeholders are a group of folks who basically range from the headwaters to the mouth of the Apalachicola River. Am I right?
Yes, sir. From all the way to Helen, Georgia, water users up there, folks around Lake Lanier, water users all over the North Georgia Metropolitan Water Planning area, Atlanta area. They're Columbus, LaGrange, Georgia, Phoenix City, Alabama, Dothan, Alabama, up into Albany and Bainbridge, Georgia, where the farming is really the key industry there. There are industry holders or industry representatives from beer companies to manufacturing plants.
Now that was a question I had for you because, you know, this is the 25th birthday of the water wars. We've been at this since 1989 now. That's when the Corps of Engineers said we're going to reallocate water and build a new reservoir. And Alabama filed their famous lawsuit, Florida joined them, and we've been at it since. Now, what impresses me about the stakeholders is that you have, from what I can see, a wide variety of people and organizations who normally wouldn't be hobnobbing together. You've got the manufacturers, you've got governments, you've got recreational folks, you've got the seafood industry here, and it's just a wide-ranging group of people that you wouldn't normally expect would gather together on a cause. Now, how did that come about?
Your point is well taken about the 25 years of litigation, and this started when we were on about year 18 or 19, and we were all getting to see each other at the hearings and different litigation moments throughout that 18-19 year period, and really kind of got tired of the litigation and saw that it was really not helping anybody much. It was mostly just burning up a lot of money for the lawyers and or to the lawyers, and that the end result wasn't going to be that helpful for anybody. Plus nobody knew what the end result was going to be. So we thought we'd try to get together and work it out collaboratively and see if we couldn't come to an agreement that way outside of the litigation.
And really, when did you guys actually start and have your first meeting to explore that alliance, if you will?
You know, I can't remember the exact date, but it was about 5 years ago. And there was basically 7 different interest individuals that met, and we met up in LaGrange, Georgia, and just asked ourselves that question: did we think we would, you know, kind of really be able to work things out collaboratively? And we thought maybe there was a chance that it couldn't be any worse than the litigation was, but we really thought, you know, that trying to understand what each other's issues were and try to resolve it in a more amicable way would provide sooner answers and better results. That was our feeling at the time.
Well, amicable to the point that the stated goal of the stakeholders, at least according to their website, is to build a decision totally through consensus.
Correct.
And you know, you've got some really wide-ranging interests, and yet so far you seem to be able to be building consensus where the politicians and the lawyers have not.
Well, there's probably a few reasons of that. You know, when politics gets into play, there's election campaigns and there's sound bites, and you know, if you're trying to make the other guy look bad or build yourself up as I'm saving this or I'm fighting for my people or whatever, you know, it's very conducive to throwing out these little innuendos in the press, and we all did it as stakeholders too, but we really got aware that, you know, it was, you know, every few years we'd go through a big flurry of it, and it would be all the same things all over again, and we were making no headway.
Yeah, politics by soundbite is
Right.
not real effective.
The litigation, on the other hand, you know, was mostly behind closed doors. There were very little information outside of these rooms of negotiations, which were closed to the public. And so we couldn't, as stakeholders, we didn't know what the negotiations were about at all. And that was kind of, you know, we never knew what was going on really. So we just, that seemed like a dead end, because there would be months of that, and you know, then we're not talking anymore, and then another threshold in the litigation would transpire. It would be transferred to another level of a court, or
And another flurry of paper goes back and forth.
Right, and so it just seemed again that under the litigation venue nothing was happening. So you have the legislative angle of trying to get the politicians to work together, and that wasn't working, and you had the legal branch of trying to get the three states together. The court always said, the three states will just agree, we'll do whatever they say. And so I think they may be over that now, but...
well, I remember when the Republican governor of Florida, Charlie Crist, said, you know, all three of us governors are Republicans. We ought to be able to work this out by the ends of our terms.
Yeah.
Here we are today, and Charlie's running as a Democrat. I suppose this is an attempt in some way to bring the process more into the sunshine, although you've recently had a controversy, and I want to ask about that. Stakeholders are in the process of doing a study of the entire watershed from top to bottom, and on that they hope to build the consensus. There was some movement within that group to ask that the results of what they were finding out through their modeling and their scientific assessments be kept under wraps until it was all complete, so that I guess people wouldn't have the opportunity to pick at it piecemeal.
Right.
And that was the kibosh was put on that. And can you give me a little idea of what happened there?
Well, basically, when Florida filed its suit against Georgia in the Supreme Court, that was the original action.
This is the Rick Scott, Attorney General Bondi, filing in what was that, 13? Last fall.
October, I think it was October 1st.
Yes.
And when that happened, it put some of the stakeholders in a situation where they felt like things were changing in the basin, and you know, a lot of I guess anxiety or question about what it was that all the other stakeholders were doing in that. You know, so I think we had built up quite a level of respect or trust over those 4.5 years, and that litigation has the effect. You know, lawyers do not necessarily breed trust in the other parties. So I think that they just felt like that we needed to, let's agree to what we're going to agree to, and until we can do that, we will just hold our meetings in private, which, you know, it wasn't like everybody loved that idea, but it's another consensus thing, is we're trying to work within everybody's constraints so that we can have discussions that we maintain some level of trust in each other. And
well, see, I thought it was objections by Florida government that sort of derailed the agreement to keep those findings under wraps until they were complete.
No, just the litigation. I mean, if you call that an objection, that was what started the reaction. You know,
Okay.
as it was presented to the governing board.
In terms of structure, basically what the stakeholders have done is created, what is it, 4 areas? The upper Chattahoochee, the middle and lower Chattahoochee, the Flint Basin, and the Apalachicola Basin.
Correct.
And then there's an executive committee that is elected by the members of each of those constituent districts.
Yes, just to clarify, each caucus, it's called the Flint Caucus, Apalachicola Caucus, Middle and Lower Caucus, Upper Chattahoochee Caucus. Each caucus has 14 members. They select 2 members to the executive committee.
Okay.
So the executive committee is 8 members, 2 from each caucus.
And then the caucus members are elected by the membership at large?
Correct.
Interesting. Okay, so it's hard to imagine a more democratic distribution than that, although, you know, all things being equal and humans being human, I'm sure there are some folks who have more influence than others.
Well, it's a very time-consuming topic, as you can imagine. I mean,
It would have to be a labor of love.
it is. Everybody basically volunteers. There's nobody there paid. We have one paid executive administrator who keeps all the balls rolling, you know, the minutes and board communications and that. Everybody else that's on the governing board is a volunteer, per se. You know, we're paid by our organizations just as our staff time. An organization cannot send their lawyer, you know, their contract lawyer, to represent them. Okay.
I like that rule. I like that rule a lot.
And the consensus vote is what you pointed out is probably the one thing that everybody outside of the organization has said you'll never make it with that kind of a voting requirement. But so far, we're there.
Well, I mean, there will be dissent with the final product of the stakeholders in this study, I'm sure, but whether it's enough to derail the entire process, you know, you can join consensus with 9 out of 10 items on the agenda, as I understand it. So
yeah, I mean, you know, the consensus is that you can live with it, not necessarily that you're all excited about it being a great deal. So
you can register a dissenting opinion, but you're not going to derail the entire process.
Yes.
So that being said, as I understand it, the membership is lacking any one of 3 governors, any one of speakers of the House, Senate presidents, the legislatures, and the executive branches of these 3 states are not represented in this process. What is the optimism? What's the optimism that makes you think that this process has a chance?
I think the support that we have, not support, the encouragement that we've gotten from the Corps of Engineers, who fully feels like, you know, we're the best opportunity for trying to resolve things in the basin. And the fact that the states have, they are not sitting members on the governing board, but they do send representatives to listen in, and they have actually participated in some of the meetings in terms of providing some feedback or reports of, you know, different policies in the states and, you know, informational items, not arguing positions or anything like that.
Are they trying to bring any pressures to bear, or are they just sitting back waiting to see what the process delivers?
Well, I think in general it is waiting to see if we can come to consensus on a plan forward. Okay. So I don't say that naively and want you to think, oh yeah, they're just anxiously waiting for us to come up with something, but they are paying attention and just watching how it's going. That is better than nobody paying attention. Okay.
Oh,
so,
absolutely, because if you manage to pull off a decent consensus, the political constituencies that would be able to focus on those three legislative bodies would be enormous. It would be at its highest point in the entire 25 years of the dispute, because this has largely been between state governments, not so much the people. So
right. And we sort of have the opinion, which we can have our opinions, is that we are the people that are most affected by the lack of decision that has been going on. Yeah. Things are getting worse for everybody.
Yes.
Harder to plan, harder to know your future.
Well, you know, you have to have a certain amount of sympathy for Atlanta, because 98% of their municipal supply comes from groundwater. They can't, or surface water rather, they can't drill for all that bedrock and bring it up through wells. So, you know, there's a lot of different needs at play. And if there's a way to come out where everybody feels like it's a win-win-win, then it's got a chance of sticking.
I think that, or maybe a little more realistic where we all lose less.
But that's still a win-win-win.
Well, it is, and if we can do it in another year or 6 months rather than another 10 years and maybe another $30 or $50 million that the lawyers walk off with, you know, we're all better off for that except the lawyers.
All right, the study's ongoing now. What's the anticipated timetable to when you have the scientific information laid out in front of you to form your final consensus?
We're actually in the modeling phase now and looking at all that information. We hope that by the fall we'll have a draft of a sustainable water management plan that we can provide to the Corps and the states and get a reaction.
Well, it should be a fall to remember then, because we're supposed to get the environmental impact study from the Tate's Hell military training assessment, and
we're going to have the water control manual EIS first draft out, possibly from the Corps.
And hopefully the stakeholders will have something to say about that too.
Well, we hope to have some input that will be meaningful and that the Corps will try to work with us on.
Excellent. Dan Tonsmiere, Apalachicola Riverkeeper, thanks for joining us this afternoon. As always, you're a wealth of information and grounded.
Well, Ed, we appreciate you always giving us a little time and keeping abreast of what's going on.
Oh, I'm just a nosy old guy that likes to stick my nose in it.
Well, you're good at knowing what to pay attention to for folks around here, so thanks.
Thank you.